Good morning, friends. Anne here, got my cup of coffee, got the Word of God, and today's reading is from Luke chapter 18, verses 9 through 14. Friends, today we are talking about being poor in spirit, and Jesus gives us this example of both being poor in spirit and being full of yourself. So let's read it and then we'll talk about it. It says this in verse 9. To some who were confident of their own righteousness and looked down on everyone else, Jesus told this parable. So he was surrounded with people who were filled with themselves, with their self-righteousness, their self-importance. And this is what he said. Two men went up to the temple to pray, one a Pharisee and the other a tax collector. The Pharisee stood up and prayed about himself. God, I thank you that I am not like other men, robbers, evildoers, adulterers, or even like this tax collector. I fast twice a week and give a tenth of all I get. So here was this man full of himself, lifting his hands up and having accolades for himself and looking down on someone else. The hands that he was presenting, the posture that he was presenting was of self-importance and self-righteousness. And notice that it said, the Pharisee stood up and prayed about himself. He didn't pray for himself. He didn't pray for other people. He prayed about himself, which means that his hands were already full when he lifted them up to God. He was not poor in spirit. He was full of himself. Now, contrast that with the tax collector. Now, the tax collector was one of the most hated sinners of the day because this person, a tax collector, would have been someone that would have been seen as a betrayer, someone who had betrayed their citizens and their country to get ahead and to financially gain and to work for the Roman government, the enemy. And so here is the tax collector. But the tax collector stood at a distance. He would not even look up to heaven, but beat his chest and said, God, have mercy on me, a sinner. I tell you that this man, rather than the other, went home justified before God. For everyone who exalts himself will be humbled, and he who humbles himself will be exalted. Friends, while the Pharisee was full of himself when he brought and raised his hands to God in prayer, the tax collector's hands were empty. He recognized that he had nothing to give. And while he was raising his hands in prayer, he couldn't even raise his head because he knew how sinful he was. He beat his chest because he felt so bad. There was so much remorse. And he cried out for God's mercy. Friends, we are to be like the tax collector, the sinner who recognizes his own sin, the one who doesn't bring a handful of self-righteousness and self-importance, but someone who brings an empty hand and an empty heart. Because when you come empty to God, that is when you can be filled. So friends, today remember that the only way to be filled is to be empty before God. Don't fill yourself up with your self-importance and your self-righteousness. Don't fill yourself up with comparisons of how you are so much better than someone else. Come empty before God in prayer and let God fill you up. Have a good day.